The cold wind cut through the quiet town like a whisper of warning. It was Christmas Eve, and the streets were empty, blanketed in snow. Claire hurried through the darkened park, her breath visible in the frigid air, when a faint sound froze her in place. A child's desperate cry, echoing from the shadows. Her heart raced. Who could be out here alone in this biting cold? Pushing through the snow-laden path, she spotted him. A small figure huddled beneath a barren tree, shivering uncontrollably, his tiny hands clutching a worn coat that did little to shield him from the frost. Claire's instincts overrode her fear. Kneeling beside him, she whispered words of comfort, wrapping her scarf around his trembling shoulders. His eyes flickered open, wide, haunted, and strangely familiar. Something about him stirred a memory she couldn't place, a flicker of recognition that made her chest tighten. But before she could ask a single question, she knew she had to act. She scooped him into her arms, feeling the fragility of life in his shivering body, knowing every second mattered. This was more than a simple act of kindness. It was the beginning of a story that would unravel secrets, heal old wounds, and reveal a truth no one expected. If you want to discover who this mysterious child really is, the miracle that unfolds, and the life-changing secrets hidden beneath the Christmas snow, make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join us as we uncover this incredible story together. Don't miss a single moment, because some stories are too powerful to be forgotten. Snowflakes danced through the air like tiny shards of glass, carried by a merciless wind that whispered secrets of sorrow and forgotten prayers. The town lay silent under a thick white blanket, its streets deserted, its lights flickering faintly against the storm. Christmas Eve, a night meant for warmth, laughter, and family. Yet for Claire Donovan, it had become a night of solitude and quiet heartbreak. She tightened the scarf around her neck as she crossed the lonely road, her boots sinking into the snow. Every year, since her husband's passing, she had spent Christmas alone in her small cottage at the edge of the forest. She told herself she preferred it that way. No noise, no expectations, no reminders of what she had lost. But deep inside, her heart still longed for a miracle, something that would make her believe again. And then, she heard it, a faint sound, a cry, fragile and broken, carried by the wind. Claire froze, her pulse quickening. She turned toward the sound, her eyes scanning the dark outline of the trees. The cry came again, louder this time, desperate. Without thinking, she ran. Branches scraped her coat as she pushed through the snow-laden woods until she reached a clearing. There, beneath a trembling pine tree, she saw him. A small boy, barely 7 years old, curled up in the snow, his lips blue, his body trembling violently. His tiny hand clutched a silver locket. Claire's breath caught in her throat. "Sweetheart, what are you doing out here?" she whispered, kneeling beside him. But the boy didn't answer. His eyes, an uncanny shade of gray, fluttered open just long enough to meet hers. Eyes filled with something ancient, something that didn't belong to a child. As she wrapped him in her coat and carried him toward her home, Claire had no idea that this moment, this simple act of compassion, would unravel a mystery buried for decades and reveal a truth that would change her life forever. Because the boy she had found in the snow that Christmas Eve was not who she thought he was. The wind howled through the forest like a wounded animal, bending the trees into trembling silhouettes. Claire's lantern flickered in her hand as she stepped beyond the fence that marked the edge of her property. Snow crunched beneath her boots, each step sinking deeper into the untouched whiteness. The sound of the crying had stopped, but the echo of it lingered, haunting, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. "Hello?" she called softly, her voice breaking against the cold. "Is anyone out there?" Only silence replied, thick, heavy, almost alive. She hesitated. The logical part of her whispered to go back inside, to close the door, to pretend she had heard nothing. But something stronger pulled her forward, a feeling she couldn't explain. Perhaps it was the mother in her that never truly died, even after her heart had been broken. The light from her lantern glimmered against the snow-covered branches. Then she saw it, a small figure half hidden behind the trunk of a pine tree. For a moment, she thought her eyes were deceiving her. The shape was so still, so small, it looked like a forgotten doll left in the storm. Claire's breath hitched. She approached slowly, every step deliberate, careful not to frighten whatever it was. "Sweetheart, it's okay," she whispered. "You're safe now." When she drew closer, the truth stole the air from her lungs. It was a boy, no older than 7, his face pale as the snow around him. His dark hair was matted with ice, his lips trembling uncontrollably. He was barefoot. His small hands were pressed against his chest, clutching something silver that shimmered faintly under the lantern light. "Oh my God!" Claire dropped to her knees, pulling her coat around him. His skin was ice-cold, his pulse faint. "Can you hear me? Can you tell me your name?" The boy's eyes fluttered open, gray, deep, and strangely distant, like he was looking through her rather than at her. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Only a tear rolled down his cheek, freezing halfway. "It's all right," she murmured, holding him close. "I've got you. You're safe now." For a moment, the wind softened, as if the forest itself exhaled in relief. And as she carried the boy through the falling snow, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that something unseen was watching her, following her, as if the night itself had just awakened. Back inside her cottage, the fire crackled weakly, its glow chasing away the cold shadows that clung to the boy's trembling body. Claire wrapped him in a blanket and placed him near the hearth, rubbing his hands gently to bring back warmth. His clothes were soaked, his skin pale as wax, but his fingers still clung to the small silver medallion he had carried through the storm. She tried to loosen his grip, whispering softly, "It's okay, sweetheart. You can let go now." The boy hesitated, then slowly opened his tiny hand. The locket fell into her palm, cold as ice, yet strangely warm at its center. Its surface was scratched and aged, but under the firelight she could see something engraved along the edge. A single word, almost faded with time. "Elias." Claire's eyes widened. She turned the medallion over, expecting perhaps an address or a family name. Instead, inside the locket, she found a small, old photograph, blurred, yellowed by years. It showed a smiling woman holding a boy who looked almost identical to the one now asleep beside her. Her breath caught. Couldn't be. The picture looked like it belonged to another era entirely. Outside, the wind began to howl again, rattling the windows as if the forest itself objected to her discovery. Claire looked at the medallion one last time and whispered the name aloud, "Elias," unaware that by speaking it, she had just awakened something long forgotten. The storm outside raged like a living thing, battering the windows as if trying to claw its way in. Claire sat beside the sleeping boy, listening to the wind and the crackle of the fire. Every few minutes, she reached out to touch his forehead, checking for warmth, whispering small prayers she hadn't spoken in years. Then, without warning, his body jerked. A soft gasp escaped his lips, and his eyes flew open. Claire leaned closer, startled but relieved. "Hey, it's okay, you're safe now. You're in my home." But the boy didn't seem to see her. His gaze darted around the room, wide and unfocused, as if searching for something or someone beyond her walls. Then, slowly, his eyes met hers. In that instant, Claire's heart stilled. His eyes weren't just gray. They shimmered with a strange light, deep and ancient, filled with a sorrow no child should ever carry. It felt as though he was looking through time itself, as though behind those eyes lived someone far older than his fragile body suggested. He whispered, his voice cracked and trembling, You found me." Claire blinked, unsure she'd heard correctly. "What did you say, sweetheart?" But he had already closed his eyes again, exhaustion dragging him back into sleep. She sat there in silence, her mind racing. The name engraved in silver echoed in her thoughts. Elias. Who was he? Where had he come from? Outside, the wind shifted. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rang midnight, Christmas Day. And for the first time in years, Claire felt something stir in her heart. A shiver of awe, of wonder, and of fear. Because the boy's eyes, before closing, had looked at her as if they remembered her. The morning light crept through the frosted windows, turning the world outside into a blur of white and gold. Claire had dozed off in the armchair beside the boy, the medallion still resting in her hand. When she woke, the fire had faded to glowing embers, and the house was eerily quiet. The boy, Elias, was awake, sitting upright on the couch, his gaze fixed on the flames. His blanket had slipped from his shoulders, but he didn't seem to feel the cold. There was something oddly composed about him, as though he understood far more than his years allowed. Claire approached gently. "Good morning, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" He turned toward her, his expression calm yet distant. "You shouldn't have come into the woods," he murmured softly. Her stomach tightened. "Why do you say that?" He hesitated, eyes lowering to the locket in her hand. "Because now, they'll come looking." Before Claire could ask who they were, a sharp knock echoed through the cabin. 3 deliberate raps against the door. She froze. No one ever came this far out in the snow. Her instincts told her to open it, to follow the polite rules of small-town courtesy. But something deeper, something primal, whispered don't. Elias looked at her, his eyes suddenly intense. "Please," he said, his voice trembling. "Don't open the door." Outside, a man's voice called through the storm, official and commanding. "Mrs. Donovan? We're from Child Protective Services. We received a report about a missing boy. Please open up." Claire's hand hovered over the latch. Her heart pounded, torn between reason and something unexplainable. The feeling that this child, this mysterious boy she'd found beneath the tree, wasn't just another case in a report. He was the reason she'd been alone all these Christmases. The storm had quieted, but the night remained heavy with snow. Inside the cottage, the fire burned brighter than before, filling the small room with a golden glow. Claire had shut every curtain, locked the door, and silenced the world outside. Whatever those men wanted, whatever truth they carried, it could wait until morning. Elias sat wrapped in a thick blanket, his eyes reflecting the dancing flames. He looked less fragile now, though still pale, and when he spoke, his voice was soft, almost reverent. "Why did you help me?" Claire smiled faintly, stirring the soup on the stove. "Because that's what people do when someone's in need." He studied her face for a long moment, as if searching for something deeper than words. "No one ever stays when I call," he said finally. "Not anymore." Her hand paused mid-motion. The phrasing struck her. Too old, too sorrowful for a child. She knelt beside him, setting the spoon aside. "You're safe here, Elias. Whatever happened out there, it's over now." He shook his head gently. "It never really ends." For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of crackling wood and the faint hiss of wind against the windows. Then Claire took his small hands in hers, warming them between her palms. "Listen to me," she whispered. "Whatever this is, whoever's after you, I won't let them take you. I promise." Elias's lips parted as though he wanted to believe her. Then, in a fragile voice, he asked, "Even if it means they come for you too?" Her heart tightened. Even then, tears welled in his eyes, not from fear, but from something like recognition, as though her words echoed a memory buried deep inside him. Slowly, he leaned his head against her shoulder, his breathing evening out. Claire closed her eyes and whispered a quiet prayer. Not the formal kind she'd learned in church, but one born of love and desperation. If there's still grace left in this world, she murmured, let this boy see another dawn. Outside, the snow began to fall again, softly, gently, like a blessing. And as the firelight flickered across their faces, the shadows on the wall seemed to bend closer, listening, as if heaven itself had heard her promise. Dawn broke slowly, veiled in pale mist and silence. The snow outside glistened like powdered glass, undisturbed except for a single trail of footprints, small, vanishing into the woods. Claire woke with a start. The blanket beside her was empty. Elias? She called, her voice trembling. No answer. Heart pounding, she threw on her coat and rushed outside. The cold struck her lungs like ice, but she followed the faint prints leading toward the trees. The forest, once peaceful, now felt watchful. Every branch heavy with snow, every gust of wind whispering her name. Then she saw him, standing near the old wooden bridge that crossed the frozen stream. The boy was staring at the water below, the medallion gleaming in his hand. Elias! She cried, running to him. You can't be out here. He turned slowly, his expression unreadable. This is where it happened, he said softly. Claire froze. What do you mean? The car? The ice broke. She tried to save me. And then it hit her, the name, the photograph, the strange familiarity. Her mind pieced together what her heart had already begun to fear. There had been an accident years ago, a mother and son who vanished on Christmas Eve. She remembered the story from the papers, the search that ended when the river froze over. No, Claire whispered. That can't be true. You're here. You're alive. Elias looked down at the medallion, his voice distant. She never stopped calling for me. Every Christmas, I hear her voice. I wait, and someone always passes by, but no one ever stops. Tears blurred Claire's vision. She reached for him, but her hands met only cold air. And then, slowly, he began to fade, his outline shimmering in the morning light. Don't be afraid, he said, his voice echoing like wind through the trees. You kept your promise. Now I can rest. The medallion slipped from his hand into the snow, the only trace he ever left behind. And as Claire knelt by the bridge, the first light of Christmas morning broke through the clouds, warm, golden, and filled with peace. The evening settled over the small town like a soft blanket, the sky painted in deep indigos and streaks of crimson from the fading sun. Claire hurried home, her breath forming clouds in the frosty air, her hands clutching the medallion that had been left behind on the snowy bridge. Every step felt heavier with anticipation, yet lighter with hope, a strange mixture that tugged at her heart. Inside her modest living room, the fire crackled warmly, throwing golden light across the walls adorned with simple decorations and handmade ornaments. She had spent the afternoon preparing, setting the table with mismatched plates and silverware, each one polished until it shone. But tonight, it wasn't about perfection. It was about presence, about opening a space in her heart for someone she didn't yet fully understand. The doorbell rang softly, echoing through the quiet house. Claire's hands trembled as she opened the door to find a young woman standing there, a shy smile on her lips, her little daughter clutching a small basket of apples. The mother's eyes mirrored her own, wary, tired, yet filled with an unspoken plea for warmth and belonging. Hello, Claire said, her voice steady despite the rush of emotion. Come in. Dinner's ready. They entered slowly, the small girl's eyes wide with curiosity as she took in the cozy space, the aroma of roasted vegetables and fresh bread filling the air. Claire guided them to the table, and as they sat, a sense of calm washed over everyone. A quiet acknowledgement that, somehow, this night was meant to be. The conversation was hesitant at first, each word chosen carefully, yet laughter began to bloom like tiny sparks in the corners of the room. The mother spoke of her struggles, the child's small triumphs at school, and the little adventures they had shared despite the hardships of life. Claire listened, heart aching and soaring at the same time, realizing that for the first time in years, she was not alone. Then, without warning, a gentle wind brushed against the window, carrying with it the faintest echo of a child's laughter. The same laugh she had heard in the woods, the one that had haunted her dreams and guided her steps. The little girl's eyes widened, and she pointed toward the fireplace. For a moment time seemed to pause. Claire understood. Elias was with them in spirit, watching, guiding, blessing this gathering of hearts that had been strangers just hours ago. She whispered a prayer of gratitude, her voice steady and sure, as if she could feel the warmth of his presence threading through the room. As plates were passed and stories shared, the family formed around her. The mother, the daughter, and herself, bound not by blood but by love, care, and the miraculous thread of fate that had drawn them together. The firelight danced in their eyes, reflecting hope, healing, and a promise that no one would ever be truly alone again. By the time dessert arrived, simple cookies and steaming cups of cocoa, the room was alive with laughter, chatter, and the quiet certainty that this Christmas had changed everything. Claire watched the mother tuck her daughter into a warm embrace, and for the first time in years, she felt a sense of belonging, of purpose, of home. Outside, the snow fell gently, each flake catching the light like tiny stars. And in the hush of the night, Claire knew that this was not just a dinner. It was a beginning. A new family had been formed, stitched together by kindness, courage, and the miraculous power of a single act of compassion on a winter's night. As they held hands around the table, giving thanks, Claire smiled through tears. The past had left scars, yes, but tonight, love had rewritten the story. And somewhere beyond the stars, Elias's spirit smiled too, finally at peace, knowing that the world could still be bright, warm, and full of wonder. And so, Christmas arrived not only with snow and lights, but with the certainty that miracles are real, that hearts can heal, and that even the loneliest souls can find family in the most unexpected places.